Allah, Shamor v'Zachor, b'dibur echad, Hishmi'anu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, l'Shem u'leTifereth u'leThilah. Please sing with us. Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikabela. B'nei Shabbat nikabela likrat Shabbat. Lechu v'nelcha ki mikor habracha mirosh v'kedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikabela. B'nei Shabbat nikabela. Boi b'shalom ateret ba'ala gam b'simcha u'b'tzocha toch emuneh am sigura boi chala.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is so wonderful to be with you on this wonderful Shabbat. I really missed you guys, clergy team.
I missed you too.
Missed you so much.
It's good to see you, Shabbat
So
Shalom.
good to see you. And of course, I missed you, my dear and wonderful community.
There are committees and committees.
There are committees.
They are the Shabbat committee.
They are the
Okay.
I had the great privilege of being the last few weeks in Israel. In the first 10 days I was there, and I finally finished a master's program that I was working on. And on the Friday, on the Shabbat, I went to my favorite place to pray in Israel, my favorite synagogue, which is at the port in Tel Aviv. So you not only hear the rushing waters, as Hannah Senna says, but you feel it. When it's a little bit windy, the water kind of splashes on you a little bit. It's really beautiful. And I had a friend who was sitting next to me, and she whispered, "God, isn't this so amazing? Don't you wish you had a place like this to pray at home?" And I leaned over and I said, "I do." And I was thinking, of course, about our incredible chapel, which is one of the most amazing prayer spaces between the sunlight and the nature, and of course, my committee or community. However, it's so easy to bring God and spirituality into this space, and I feel not only so privileged, but so happy to be here. So Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for the warm welcome. I really missed you very much. And with that, I would like to officially welcome Shabbat and invite our martels to come light the Shabbat candles for us. Will you read first? Sure. Okay. Okay. Sure.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us.
As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. We continue our service on page 7. Please join me. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burden that must return. On this day, Shabbat abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time. Contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world on this day. On this day, Shabbat abide. I invite you to please rise as we continue with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 26.
יתקדש מרבה, יום הדברה חירותי, ויום נכמחותי, וחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה, ובזמן קריב, ואמרו,
Amen.
יהי שמירה במברך, לעולם ולעולמי עולמי. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקודשא
בריחו
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה
תושבחתה ונחמתה דן מירון בימה
ואמרו
אמן.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
There is one who sings the song of his own life, finding everything within himself. There is one who leaves the circle of herself and sings the song of her people. There is one whose voice rings with the song of humanity, hoping for the highest perfection. There is one who rises even higher, untying with all the creatures, with all worlds, filling the universe with song. Nevarech, let us bless. We continue with the Shema on page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed.
Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. You may be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Continue on page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, and there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות על ספלה, נורא תהילות על ספלה. מלאכותך Adonai Imloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai Imloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai Imloch le'olam va'ed, le'olam, le'olam, le'olam.
Please join me for the Amidah on page 46. I invite you to please rise as you are able.
Adonai sefati tiftach uvia yitilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Nora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע מגן, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor leolam baronai, mechayecha kol atah, Rav lechoshia, morit hatal, mechakel chayim bechesed, mechayecha kol berachamim rabim, masomer noflim, verofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar michamocha ba'al gevurot umidol melech melech mevit umechaye umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman natan lachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלע. You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. You may be seated. We continue on page 61. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamevarech et amo Israel b'shalom.
Shalom b'rav ha'Yisrael ha'macha tasim le'olam. Shalom b'rav ha'Yisrael ha'macha tasim le'olam. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hasham v'tov b'einecha levarech damcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל.
We pray silently.
Good evening, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We're going to continue now with our Torah service, which continues on page 244. There is none like you among the gods, Adonai. There are no deeds like yours. You are sovereign over all worlds. Your dominion is in all generations. Adonai reigns. Adonai has reigned. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Adonai will give strength to our people. Adonai will bless our people with peace. Will you please rise?
אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך. מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוזר וייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. הרחמים היטיב ברצונך את ציון. תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים. כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך הרמניסה, אדון עולמים.
In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
כי בציון תצא תורה, כי בציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה, תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה, תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. שמע ישראל
may be seated.
Thank you, Lisa Martell. I mean, Laura Martell. That's Lisa Martell. Thank you, Laura.
Well, I just got a note from somebody else that was passing around about another name for our list. I'm going to write it down. I hope I get it right.
While you're writing it down, I just want to thank Laura Martell for singing Roma Mu so beautifully. Thanks, Laura.
And while you're thanking Laura,
Yes,
I think I'll move to my Devartora.
I think it's a great idea.
Well, I want to begin my remarks this evening by saying a word or two about a favorite movie of mine, and maybe a favorite movie of yours, Goodfellas. This, of course, like the Godfather series, is a mobster, a gangster movement. And aside from all the excitement that these movies generate, one interesting episode after another, they also, interestingly, and I suppose we could say problematically, create in us, the observers, a kind of sympathy for these mobster characters. We begin to feel for them and begin to feel about them. And there is something strange about that. But my reason for bringing this up is that one of the main characters in the movie, played by Paul Sorvino, died this past week. And soon after he died, I read an interesting obituary in the New York Times about him. And in this obituary, he is described as how he decided to take the role of Paulie Cicero in the movie. At first, he says, he didn't want to take this role. He was, and I'm quoting the obituary, a proud Italian American, a connoisseur of Italian culture, particularly food and wine, and he was not inclined to play a mafioso. And as the article continues, and I'm quoting, at a 2015 panel at the Tribeca Film Festival commemorating the 25th anniversary of Goodfellas, Sorvino poked a little fun at people who complimented him on his choices in what was to become his or one of his signature roles. He scoffed at the idea of choices, insisting, "I found this guy, and the guy made the choices, not me." How? How did he come to take the role? Well, as he continues to describe it, he says, "I was at one moment removing a bit of spinach from between my teeth by looking in the mirror. And there," he said, staring back at me, "was a fixed scowl meeting me. I saw this guy, and that was it." He became Paulie Cicero, the Queens-based mob underboss in Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. So what happened when he looked in the mirror at that moment? Well, he saw his own face, to be sure. But he also saw something else, another person, another aspect of himself, a person he could bring to life in the film. That is, I want to suggest, he recognized that other person who was also himself. I want to look at the word recognized for a minute. We can break it down into recognized. That is, to know something again, to see something again, to see another self and a recognition of that self. And this moment changed everything. From his unwillingness to take on the role to his enthusiastic embrace, which he presented as a master characterization of a mob boss. Now, at this moment, you're probably wondering, why is the rabbi telling this story about Goodfellas at our Kabbalat Shabbat service this Friday evening? What indeed does this have to do with Judaism in general and with our Torah portion in particular? And my answer to that question is everything. And I invite you to stay with me for a few minutes. Our Torah portion for this Shabbat is a double portion, the two final portions of the book of Numbers, the fourth book of the Bible. It contains 7 chapters, so it's a long double portion. Where are we at this moment in the Torah? Where are we in the story? We are at the very final moment of the 40 years wandering in the wilderness. At last, we have arrived to the very brink of the promised land. The moment is right now at hand. And this is underlined by the last 2 words of the book of Numbers. Yarden Yerecho, Jordan, Jericho. As the book of Numbers ends, we come to feel the imminent presence of, first, the Jordan River, it's right here, and then the ancient city of Jericho. And indeed, the people do go in, as we know. But they don't go in right away. In fact, as we turn the page or the sheet of the parchment, we expect what comes next to be that entry. We're right there. But in fact, they don't go in the next book, in the 5th book. They go in the 6th book. And because of this, some scholars have invented a term for the unit consisting of the first 4 books of the Bible. And they call it the Tetratuch. We've all learned about the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, what we think of as the basic unit. We all know, or some of us know, the term Hexatuch, which includes the 6th book of the Bible, the book of Joshua, in which the ark of the promises is finally fulfilled. So there is a natural flow between the 4th book and the 6th book. Now let's imagine a bard, a storyteller, or maybe even an editor, reading the first 4 books of the Bible and coming to this moment. And this storyteller, here's the Paul Sorvino allusion, looks into the mirror. This storyteller looks into the mirror and he asks himself or herself, who am I? Who is this people whose journey I am narrating? And at this moment, he saw another version of himself. He saw, first of all, like Paul Sorvino, who didn't want to take the role, that he doesn't want to delay the marching into the promised land. It's as if we're at the end of a grand symphony, and it goes dun, 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 dun. And we're dying for that final duh. And that is the entrance into the promised land. But the narrator is unwilling to go there. He sees another version of the story. He recognized another self. And here's what I imagine his saying to himself. I'm not just a storyteller who's continuing to narrate the physical journey of the people in space and time. There's another me that I have just discovered. And here's the crucial moment. For looking into the mirror, he saw himself and he saw his people the way the book of Deuteronomy sees him and us. He sees the need for a book in between the penultimate moment of the story and the ultimate moment of the story. It's not just a people moving from place to place he has discerned. They are a people who, pardon the verb, Deuteronomies. That's the journey we have to find ourselves on. It's only in Deuteronomy that we find out what journey we are undertaking. And so, this storyteller or this editor brings Deuteronomy and shoves it between the fourth book and the sixth book. This makes some sense, doesn't it? As a book that has been introduced into the story much later than the flow of the narrative, because in fact, it interrupts the narrative. And what does Deuteronomy tell us? That this is a spiritual journey we're on, a journey of self-discovery, a journey that doesn't end with the physical arrival in the land, with entering the promised land in space and time, but it's an endless journey that seeks to bring to realization finally not just the promised land. That's easy to get to. But the promise of the promised land. That's hard. This moment of the nexus between Book 4 and Book 6 happens over and over again in the Bible and throughout our history. The search for the meaning of the physical journey that is not limited to the physical journey itself. I want to point quickly to two examples. Both of them happen at the beginning of the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis is a book of journeys. Let me point to two of them. One features going out, and the other features going in. Adam and Eve going out of the Garden of Eden, Abraham going into, along with Sarah, the land of Israel. These are not physical journeys alone. Adam and Eve, who leave the possibility of eternity and enter historical time, in which we have a limited series of moments in which to live and in which we finally die. Adam and Eve discover through that journey out, what does it mean to be human? And one of the things it means to be human is that Adam comes from Adamah. See the pun? Adam, human beings, at this point in the story, Adam is not man. Adam is mankind. The separation between men and women comes later. Humanity learns that they are surrounded by finitude and that time is precious. Abraham is called by God to the land that I will show you, and he goes. But what kind of a journey is he making as he wanders around the Middle East? He finds out, for example, what it means to do two things more or less simultaneously. To challenge God and God's dictates, and to submit to God. in no easy combination. And he also learns what it means to live in interaction with others who think differently than we do. Both Adam and Eve and Abraham and Sarah have looked into the mirror again, and they have found another definition of what it means to be them. That the physical journey is only the form, the outward aspect of another kind of journey, an inner, substantive, spiritual search for the meaning of our lives. In other words, the biblical author forces Adam and Eve, forces Abraham and Sarah, and by extension, every reader down through the ages to look in the mirror again and to see, who am I? What am I meant to do? And what does Deuteronomy, the book that has been shoved in between book 4 and book 6 to make now book 5, what does Deuteronomy tell us who we are the day before the arrival in the promised land? And I'm going to summarize what it tells us. It tells us to believe in the oneness of God, the oneness of what we worship, which can be extended to a vision of the one universe, laws, the laws of science, all around the universe, the oneness of the human family, the oneness of universal values, which are not merely expressions of taste or subjectivity. There are values, and fundamentally, the fundamentals are one. Deuteronomy tells us to embrace loyalty to God, to one's people, to covenant, to all peoples, to humanitarianism, to the poor and the disadvantaged and the disenfranchised, to immigrants and orphans and widows and animals. Deuteronomy tells us about the power of law, which orders society and gives people room to breathe and room to search in a stable environment for meaning. Deuteronomy teaches us about the power of love, the ahavta et Adonai. You shall love the Lord your God. You shall love the stranger, love your neighbor as yourself. It tells us about the importance of the land of Israel. Fundamentally, it tells us to hope. And I want to quote from chapter 4 of Deuteronomy. But if you search there for the Lord your God, you will find him. If only you seek God with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in distress, because all of these things have befallen you, and in the end, return to the Lord your God and obey God. For the Lord your God is a compassionate God. God will not fail you, nor will he let you perish. God will not forget the covenant which God made on oath with our ancestors. This is the real journey to which we are called. The physical journey, of course, is important, the context, the place, the time in which we live. But it's only the form of the journey, the content. Is the journey to seek to live a life of values, of care, of concern, of dignity, of hope. Deuteronomy placed a mirror in front of a people, ready to move on, and to ask them to pause, to look again, to notice, to recognize who they are, what they're up to, before they continue with the physical journey, before they begin to live their communal lives in the presence of others. Let me go for a big statement here as I conclude. Deuteronomy is Paul Sorvino's mirror. Looking into the mirror and seeing that guy. I want to read from the very last verses of the book of Deuteronomy, and you will hear Yarden Yerecho, Jordan Jericho, at the very end. And as we know, all of us stood at Sinai. And so when we come to read the Torah, all of us have the obligation and the privilege to say the blessings for reading of Torah. Let's do them together. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Notein HaTorah. Amen. Last week we talked about the daughters of Tzavlachad, who wanted, in the absence of sons, to inherit their father's holdings. And here at the very end, they finally do it. Ka'asher tziva Adonai et Moshe, kein asu benot Tzalafchad. Dehiyena Malka, Machla, Tirza, Chagla, Umalka, Vanoah, benot Tzalafchad, Lifnei Dodehen, Lishanim. Mimishpachot b'nei Menashe ben Yosef hayu lenashim. Utehi nachalatan al mate mishpachat avihen. Ela hamitzvot v'hamishpatim asher tziva Adonai b'yad Moshe el b'nei Yisrael ba'arvot Moab al Yarden Yerecho. And just as God commanded Moses, so did the daughters of Tzalafchad do. As the five daughters, Machla and Tirza and Chagla, Malka, Noam, the daughters of Tzalafchad married into the family of their ancestors. The families of Menashe, the son of Joseph, they became wives. And also, their inheritance remained with the tribe of their ancestors. And now the author gives a final note of the book of Numbers. These are the commandments and the ordinances which the Lord commanded to the Israelites through the hand of Moses in the plains of Moab, over and against the Jordan River and the city of Jericho. It's our custom that when we finish a book of the Torah, as we just have, that we rise and we congratulate one another with chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Let's say that together. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. May we be strong and strengthen one another.
Amen.
Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek.
Amen.
Amen. You may be seated. At this moment, we pause, as we always do at this time, to take into our hearts those members of our community circle of friends who are ailing at this moment of body, of mind, of spirit. I'm going to read the list that I have, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to mention those about whom you are thinking. Leo Durant, John Goodman, Dan Gross, Amelia Hegarty, Maddie Jefferson, Jenny McKenna, Kathy Seamus Meyerson, Richard Moore, Bob Shippey, Andy Strauss, Fred Tarrin, Sandy Tarrin. Let's sing the Mishaberach together. You can find the words on page 253.
the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. B'Shebera Imotenu, B'Kor HaBracha Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with Refuah Shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
As I raise the Torah and ask you to rise, I ask you to notice a very noteworthy aspect of this scroll, and that is a space, really of 4 lines, which indicates the end of one book and the beginning of the other. Some Torah portions are very hard to find, especially the portion of the golden calf, which Rabbi Daniel Jeremy Silver once said was because the rabbis were ashamed of it. These Torah portions are easy to find because of this space. Will you please rise as we celebrate the presence of Torah in our people's midst? We continue now on page 256. Yahalalu et Shem Adonai ki niskav shemo levado. Let us praise the name of Adonai, for God's name alone is exalted. For those who hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Return us to you, Adonai, and we will return, renew our days as of old.
Eitz Chaim hi lemachzikim ba v'tom chacham meushar dirachecha
standing as we turn now to page 282 for the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol la'tei gdula li'otzeh breshit shalom v'asano kigoyer ha'aratzot v'lo zamanu kimishpachot ha'adama shalom samchalkenu kachem v'gor aleinu kichol ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומורדים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא
You may be seated.
Ozi, Vizimaradia, Yeshua. Ozi, Vizimaradia, Yeshua. Ozi, Vizimaradia, Yeshua. Ozi, Vizimaradia,
We turn now in our prayer books to page 292 as we prepare for the recitation of the mourner's Kaddish. When cherished ties are broken and the chain of love is shattered, only trust and the strength of faith can lighten the heaviness of the heart. At times, the pain of separation seems more than we can bear. But if we dwell too long on our loss, we embitter our hearts and harm ourselves and those about us. The psalmist said that in his affliction he learned the law of God. And in truth, grief is a great teacher when it sends us back to serve and to bless the living. We learn how to counsel and comfort those who, like ourselves, are bowed with sorrow. We learn when to keep silent in their presence and when a word will assure them of our love and our concern. Thus, even when they are gone, the departed are with us, moving us to live, as in their higher moments they themselves wish to live. We remember them now, they live in our hearts, they are an abiding blessing. We think now of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We think especially on this occasion of a member of our congregational family whom we lost during this past week, Irving Brown. And we think as well of those who have been laid to rest within the past 30 days. William Ebb Goldstein, Jeffrey L. Korak, Byron Krantz, Shannon Stasiak, Adam D. Crystal, Rita Nancy Madison Gitson, James D. Krongold, Alan S. Sims. And we take into our hearts as well those individuals whose yahrzeits take place at this time. Lawrence Edward Apt Jr., Dr. David D. Alsbacher, Annie Altschul, Stanley Bach, Frida Bayless, Dorothy Klein Baum, Sadie Berkins, Mark Bloomberg, Emily Brereton, Philip Charnas, Simon L. Danziger, Arthur R. Derry, Annabelle Sobransky Dolan, Adeline Egger, Albert C. Eisenberg, Albert F. Edinger, Emily R. Edinger, Marcus Fader Sr., Marshall H. Fine, Albert S. Forsch, Dr. David Foxman, George Friedman, Henrietta Garfinkel, Shirley Trossler Glick, Morton Z. Goldstein, Martha P. Gross, Margot L. Kahn, Abraham J. Kane, Irving K., Tilly Kendis, Richard I. Klein, Harry Kleinman, Gary Cohn, Annalise Krasny, Pearl S. Krause, Edith R. Labowich, Sarah Leff, Alan Leonard Levine, Morris P. Nathanson, Blanche S. Ozer, Emmanuel Reiter, Dr. Sidney H. Sachs, Ella Sadegor, Howard A. Schaefer, Harold Schneider, Marjorie K. Schwartz, Belle R. Schwenger, Ralph M. Seed, Rosalind K. Shapiro, Claire Shaw, Clara Shields, Mildred Korak Skall, Joy Weinberger, Dr. Edwin J. Whitman, Hedda Wildow, Dr. James Wolfstein. If anybody at this point would like to make mention of a loved one whose name has not just now been read, please take this opportunity to do so. As you know, we have developed a custom in our congregation to enable people to stand if they are mourners in one phase of mourning or another. One very important purpose of this is so that the rest of the community can see who is going through a period of grief, and therefore to feel invited to approach them and just to express your condolences. This is a function not only of the power of the individual, but also the healing power of community. So at this moment, I invite those who are experiencing the Shiva period, the first 7 days after the death of a loved one, to please rise if you wish. Those who are experiencing the Shloshim period, the first 30 days after the death of a loved one, to please rise. And those who are observing the Yartzeit, the anniversary of the death of a loved one, to please rise. And now, as a caring congregation, I invite all of us to rise as we together sanctify the name of our God with the words of the Kaddish, found on page 294, as we say together, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayedechol beit Yisrael, v'agalav izman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei olmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiran bi'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort all the bereaved among us, and let us say together, amen. You may be seated. This is the moment when we think about our blessings, and I don't have any specifics on my Shechiano list, but I always welcome the opportunity for all of us to express our gratitude for the blessings we have. So I invite you to, at this moment, let's close our eyes and let's each of us focus on the ways in which our lives are continually enriched, and to express quiet gratitude for that opportunity. Let's sing the Shechianu together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shechianu v'kimanu v'higianu l'zman hazeh.
Our closing song for this evening is Oseh Shalom.
Oseh Shalom imromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom imromav, hu yaseh shalom shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael.
I'm sure you can well imagine the joy and the privilege I feel by the opportunity of working with these two wonderful colleagues and friends of mine, with whom I haven't stood at the Kiddush now for a long time. So I'm going to invite Kathy and Yael and Blaze. Let's go to the Kiddush table and do it together.
Let's do it.
Come on.
Okay.
Spontaneity sometimes works.
Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzahanu, v'shabbat kodsho v'yom haba uvratzon, inchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh b'reishit, ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim, ki banu v'charta, yotanu kidashta, mikoyim v'shabbat. Kodshecha v'yava uvratzon, inkatanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. Spill the wine. Let's join together in a blessing over our bounty.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech amo v'shalom. May the Lord give strength unto God's people. May the Lord bless all of God's peoples with the blessings of shalom and peace. Amen. Shabbat
Amen.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.